the AceMagic Matrix Mini M1. Now, what's interesting to me on the back of this, and one of the reasons I didn't know what it was, is it gives us the model name and the amount of RAM and storage, but it doesn't tell us what CPU is in there. So I was like, what did they send me? I don't know if that was an oversight or what. Mini PC, just in case you didn't know what was in here. All right, let's go close up. Let's see what we got. Documentation. Nothing else in there, so I guess this lifts up. Okay, we'll set that aside. And then we've got this box here. Oh, that's our power brick. Oh, it's a pretty small power brick. And the wattage on this is what? Let me get my bigger, more magnifying glasses. "19 volts, 120 watts. And then we have this other box. This contains our cloverleaf style, often seen like with laptops, that plugs into the adapter here. So I love with these two combined cables, you get a lot of cable length if you need to run it a ways to the wall from where you're using it. This is that mounting adapter, sometimes mostly referred to as a VESA, VESA mounting adapter. That fits the VESA standard that should be on the back of your screen. Our short HDMI cable and screws. So these things, in my opinion, these all go together, and I won't use those myself, but you might. So let me get some of this clutter out of the way here, and we'll get this checked out. So first thing is, my first concern, we're going to need to plug it in. I have spare cables and I don't need the documentation, so I'm going to get all this out of the way for right now, just to try and clear my workspace. As for the unit itself, let's see if we can figure out how this opens. There we go. Well, that was easy. Now they will give you a little warning sticker covering up the LAN jack here, because when you set this up, as I've advised you over and over and over for years, don't plug this in or any other new system into the internet until after you've gone through the setup, or it could take a long time to set this up as you're waiting for updates to download. It forces you into a Microsoft account whether you like it or not. So when you first get a computer, not just AceMagic, even if you built it yourself, the first power on while you're installing Windows, I strongly recommend you leave this disconnected. Don't hook it up to Wi-Fi. In fact, don't hook up anything but keyboard, mouse, and monitor. After you get to the desktop, then you want to plug it into the network, and you want to hook up your printer and other USB devices. Do it all one at a time. Just in case you have any issues, you'll know where to look. Now, with regards to how this opens, it does appear that maybe we have some screws under the feet, because we're going to have to get at it from the underside here. Let me see if I pull a foot up. Yeah. So unfortunately, this is not, I'm not a fan of this. They're using glue to stick these feet down. And what happens when you want to open this and you take these feet off is sometimes the glue sticks, instead of to the foot, it sticks to the base of the unit. And if you do this often, the glue eventually just loses any adhesive property and it won't stay on anymore. Now look, it's not the biggest, most complicated problem to solve, but it would be nice if the feet were just separated, just moved a little distance to the side, you know, so that you could have access to the screws without having to take the feet off. They don't give you any spare feet, so if you tear them or the glue comes off, you're on your own, or you're going to end up with a machine that wobbles like a bad chair or table leg. So let's see what kind of screw is in here. I want to first open this up, and I've got a little, here we go, jeweler's set of screwdrivers here, which I think are going to do the job. Let me move this over here as well. Just trying to have some space to work. And I'm definitely going to need my glasses for this one. These look like standard Phillips screws, but the screw is way down about here. So you're going to need a narrow screwdriver that can go that far down. I'm going to try my biggest one first out of this little kit. It won't reach. It's bottoming out. Let's try the next one down. I think that's the one. Yeah, that's definitely it. There's our little screw right there. It's a little hard for me to tell if the screwdriver is biting down into it, but I can hear the screw in there loose, so I know it's working. Because this driver it's so narrow at the tip, it kind of does move around in here. So I'm trying to find the head of the screw. And this is definitely not the best driver I could be using for this type of screw head, but it'll get the job done for us. It's always going to be the last one. Always the last one that causes us trouble. Sometimes you just got to turn it upside down. And sometimes I just have to look right at it, stare it down. Is that helping? Let me try one other screwdriver. I don't know if this is my standard JIS driver. Ooh. Well, it's definitely loose. I hear it moving, but it doesn't want to come out. Well, based on that, let's just see if we can separate these two halves. So if you look at the seam and you see how it goes around like this, that suggests to me that this lid must come off. It must, right? If I say it must, it must. Isn't that how the world works? Oh, here we go. So yeah, I can definitely see the seam here. Something looks like we're getting blocked. Oh, it must have some clips. And I see that one screw I haven't removed yet. And I'm wondering if it's giving me grief. Oh, here we go. So far, so good. So you notice how that one corner doesn't want to come up. That's the one that I didn't get the screw completely out of. So maybe the reason it's not coming out is I haven't completely unscrewed it. Oh, well, that kind of saved my bacon, because guess what? We have our power jack right here going inside of this back plate. Unless I opened it backwards, because this is the bottom of the unit and the RAM should be on the front. So if I just open this backwards, maybe you're supposed to open it this way. Put that other screw with the rest. I'm seeing if there's any other screws that might be holding the board in. This feels like they did it backwards. So normally anytime you have these cutouts with ports, they're going to pop in there. So this motherboard wouldn't come out straight without first pulling the plastic holes away from the ports. And I know this thing has Wi-Fi. I am surprised we don't have some kind of an access on the front. This feels like it's been built, well, this case design isn't exactly friendly for getting into accessing our RAM and storage. So what it appears is that we're just hung up on these ports. So I'm going to have to bend this down while pulling up on the board, up and away towards me, and see if that's what's going on. Also, the heatsink also looks like it's locked in there pretty good too. So that's a little bit nerve-wracking, but be gentle with it. And we may have some Wi-Fi antennas stuck here somewhere because I haven't seen any yet. So we might be attached at both sides. There's our Wi-Fi antennas. This is our little power button. Okay, so you can see we are attached from the front and the back. That's not a great case design, but the motherboard, in all fairness, everything's accessible. There's our Wi-Fi card. Here is our NetTalk M.2 drive right here. And we have two 16 gig memory modules. So everything is easily accessible. And there's a metal plate. If you're wondering what are these screws up here, they're holding a metal plate down. And it looks like we have thermal tape that's lined up to go over this M.2. And they don't give you any other thermal tape, but there is an indentation. If you wanted to put a second M.2 over your NVMe, you definitely want to take advantage of this metal heatsink that they have screwed down to the plastic lid. The plastic lid is good because when you have a metal lid, look, they look fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's just Wi-Fi has a hard time, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, when you're behind a metal case. So putting the piece of metal here strictly for heatsink purposes is a great idea. But this is your whole system right here. Isn't that amazing? That's more computing power by far than our space shuttle program had 40 years ago. Has it been 50 years? Something like that. All right, so there's your CMOS battery. This connector is what's connecting the barrel connector. It's a very strange design. In most other cases, you would have basically one of these type of soldered on connectors over here, rather than attaching it via an external connector. That's a strange choice. This wire is hooking up our CMOS battery right there. These are our two antennas for the Wi-Fi. Be very careful with this so you don't rip those. They're very, very easily broken. And we've got some ports up here for something I don't know, but you're not going to be putting in a 2.5-inch drive or anything else in here. Thank goodness. And then that's your CPU cooling fan. I don't recommend removing this. It's sealed, and I wouldn't want for you to have to ruin your cooling because you thought you could make it better. And then this cable here is powering this fan. And then this is your ventilation where the air, this fan is going to suck air in here and blow it out through here and through here. What it looks like, two ventilations. Unless it's drawing air in one and out the other. We'll have to turn it on and see. So overall, it's not the most difficult thing to open, but it's a little bit more difficult than I was expecting. I thought when I took this back off of it, I was going to see all of this. But now we know. All right, let me put my little power button back in. It's got two little holes on one side of it, which may be difficult for the camera to pick up. And those little holes are going to align with little pegs down here that are going to hold it in place inside of this plastic case, so we'll make sure we get that seated. And we want to make sure we don't loosen that up, because that's going to align with the little power button right here. That's our power button. Okay. Make sure my thermal tape is straight. We could always put the thermal tape over here. Either way. I'll just put it back mostly the way I found it. And then let me see if I can remember how to put this back together. We're gonna go this way. Now, I mean, I can easily just unplug this. It's not a big deal. That may make this a little bit easier for me to navigate. Let's see, we want to go this way. So that means the fan goes up, remember, because we opened it from the bottom. And the antennas, I guess, doesn't matter. You just push them straight down. And then this is going to go... I don't want our antennas to get in the way of the ports. So when I plug this back in, we have to make sure that the antenna wires here don't get in the way of any of those plugs. And once we have that lined up, we should be able to just sort of push it forward and pull these apart so the heatsink can go in. It's probably going to go in easier than it came out, since I'm now familiar with it when I wasn't before. And I'm just going to run these antenna wires for the Wi-Fi above the board rather than underneath of it, so I can make sure they're not getting snagged or caught up on anything. And you'll see we have a little bowing. I think you just push down and that should snap in. And then we'll check and make sure the button works and our ports are accessible from the front. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just different. And with regards to the power connector, it does look like maybe I needed to leave this attached, because it appears, I was thinking when I took it off, I could just simply separate these two and then reattach it for easier use. But it looks like this needs to go in this corner, and it's on the other side of the board. That's why you don't want to speed this along too quickly, because you might find out, oh, wait a minute, I forgot something, or I got to check something, snagged a cable, anything like that. So what I've learned is take out this side first, then lift up the side that's facing me here, where all the Ethernet and all the ports are, and then pull it towards me, like so. And then that's our connector down here. So yeah, there's no way for us to get to that other than to have it removed. And this plug only goes in one way, so you don't have to worry about getting it backwards. So we'll plug that in. All right, lesson learned. I see what I did. So practice makes perfect. We'll raise those wires up, align our ports, start to seat this down. I don't want those wires for the antennas rather snagged. I don't want this wire snagged. We'll push down, make sure we're connected here, lined up here. That locks down. Button's working. Nothing worse than having the button get moved and then it won't turn on. And then the other thing I want to be cautious of with these antenna wires is we want to make sure that they're not going to interfere with the mounting hole for the screw here. I don't want to run a screw through them. So if we just simply move them aside, we should be okay. Now, when we go to put the lid on, I want you to pay attention that we have this long piece here that's got to go around these ports. And so it may end up having to be pulled away a little bit from those ports, but it has a tongue and groove on each end, so you should be able to slide it down. And I just want to watch those antenna wires. I don't want to pinch them. I am surprised there's no tape or anything holding them out of the way. Not that I couldn't grab a little piece of tape and just tape it up right where my finger is there, just to keep those wires from potentially getting in the way. Or I can just kind of watch them as I put this back on, just to ensure I'm not pinching on them. Because then it's probably going to have an effect on how good your Wi-Fi signal is. I will tell you, I'm a little bit concerned about those wires being right there. They are right where I need to put the screw, and I'm afraid that they're going to keep us from both seating this bottom panel on flat. Also, these wires are very thin and fragile, and it's easy to strip the insulation off and potentially tear the wire. So I think what I'm going to do, boy, it'd be nice if they had a little hook or something here that would hold this wire in place. Now, if it stays right where it's at, we should be fine. It's a big if. All right, and we'll slide this piece back down. Whoops. So this struggle here is because these ports are going to stick out a little bit, so that would be normal. And we're just going to very carefully and gently set that in. And you should hear it lock in. And then we're ready to put the screws back into it. Let me try this bigger driver here to see if that's any easier for me. Oh, that's much easier. This is the standard GIS, or Japanese Industrial Standard driver number 1 Phillips that I use for oftentimes installing those little tiny M.2 screws on motherboards. So that's the inside of it. So a little bit more detailed to get in there, but did I already go in there? Which one am I missing? The one closest to me? That makes sense. And don't over tighten. This is a plastic case, so you don't want to crack it. Once the screws feel pretty snug, don't over tighten them. And then we can take the rubber feet and just put them back on. Those did come off nice and clean, though, I will say. But over and over, if you keep opening this up, if you're one of those people, you're going to have issues with your feet sticking or tearing. So that's why I would prefer if the screws or the feet were just moved a little bit away. But we're back together. You know, again, you always want to make sure all your ports are visible, that we're not any loose wires or anything going through there. And you can usually tell by how it goes together if there's a screw blocking it, because it'll make it harder to put together than it should be. So with that, let's fire it up and see what she does. So, power cable, and I need an HDMI cable over to the streamer. Remember, we're not going to plug it into the network. I will need a keyboard and a mouse, so I'll grab that from over here, along with my dongle. We'll plug that in any USB port back here. And what am I missing? Power cable. As I mentioned, standard power cables I keep back here, so I don't have to keep rewrapping cables and all the PCs that come in for reviews, repairs, and upgrades. So I always have the 3 standards, the 2-pin, the 3-pin, and the standard larger style of plug that most desktop towers use. Okay, let's fire this up. We have a blue power light. I'm going to jump over to this output over here, which is my HDMI 3. And I don't hear this thing making a sound. It's 100% silent. And let's go through our first time boot up process. Everything is live and in real time, so you have an idea of how long things take. And yeah, this thing is 100% silent. Okay, there's my mouse. Continue in English. United States. US keyboard, no other language keyboard. Let's not connect to the internet and accept the license agreement. Username, we'll just call this AceMagic, I guess. Why not? No password. Now, when this finishes its setup, it's going to take us to the desktop. We'll go ahead and start downloading Windows updates. And in the meantime, while it's doing that, we'll take a look and see what version of Windows we have, who makes the network card driver, who makes the Wi-Fi card driver, and any other questions you might have for me, we'll address while we wait for Windows updates. I just can't get over how quiet this is. There's definitely heat coming off the heatsink, so the fan is turning. It just must not be having to cool much just yet. So after going through that out-of-box experience, as you can see, we can create a local account, despite all of the fear-mongering YouTube videos that say you can't do that anymore. I don't know what people are on, but they must live on a different planet than the rest of us. And then, let's see, almost there. Here we go. So we're at our desktop, and it looks like in 4K, which is a little difficult for me to read. So before I do anything else, let's go ahead and change that down to 1080. Keep those changes. Now I'm going to go ahead and find my Ethernet cable and give it internet access. Here we go. We'll plug this bad boy in. This is supposed to be a 2.5 gig connection. And you'll see that lower right corner is flashing. That means it's talking to the router and looking to obtain an IP address through DHCP, which it has done. And we'll go over to Settings and Windows Update. Check for updates. And while that's running, I turn these features on here because that's my preference. And again, we'll go back to Windows Update here. Well, it's checking. Let's take a right click on the Start menu, go to System, and we verify. Oh, wait a minute. We don't have an 11900. We have a 13900. Wait just a minute. See, this is the problem when it doesn't tell me on the box. I thought I was getting an 11900. I'm so confused. Well, you're not going to hear me complaining. So this is the 13900 HK. So it's the low power, and the K unlocked. All right, so 32 gigs of RAM is installed. It's Windows 11 Pro, 24H2. And let's go to the device manager. Right click, device manager. And let's see who's making some of the stuff in here. Network adapters in particular. MediaTek is the Wi-Fi card maker, which also is the Bluetooth. That's Wi-Fi 6E. Wow, this thing just keeps getting better and better. Although I know the price on this is about $100 more, if I'm not mistaken, between the 13900 and the 11900. 2.5 gig is made by Realtek. Very good. Out of curiosity, is Secure Boot enabled? Let's type in MS Info. Here we go, System Information. Look for Secure Boot. No, Secure Boot is off, but we can easily turn that on. It's got us in Pacific Standard Time. That ain't right. Let's right click and change our date and time. This can really screw up your Windows updates and browsing if your clock is off. So we want to just go ahead and, I don't know why I can't set the time zone automatically. I'll just pick Arizona, it's fine. Why that won't turn on? Well, it did update the date and time, so we're okay. But normally set time zone automatically, I can turn on. Enable location permission. Oh, it didn't ask me for any of the privacy information, did it? Location settings. I always like to turn that on, but at least it takes us right to it. I've never had to do that before, but their out-of-box experience skipped right through it. Enable location. Didn't I just do that? Let apps. I don't know, is it this one? Let's try it and see. I'm not sure. I've never had to do it this way before. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, well, we'll learn something new. Go back over to Windows Updates, and you can see it's been downloading some updates, and the machine continues to be dead silent. I am feeling more heat coming off of this, so the fan is definitely turning. I'm like, geez, I didn't unplug the fan, did I, when I was in there? Everything looks good. So we're going to let that run. Let me just make sure the screen doesn't go to sleep on us real quick. So we'll edit our power plan, and we'll change this to about 2 hours. And because this computer doesn't have batteries, there's no reason to ever put it to sleep. Okay, now I don't have to worry about the screen going out while we're live. And let me jump back to camera 1 while we wait for these updates, and I'll address any questions that you have. See, unfortunately on this box, it doesn't say what CPU we have. And that's normally one of the key factors, is it tells us which CPU. But this is giving us the name of the product, which just says Mini PC. The series is Matrix Mini. The model says M1. All three of those could be on one line. Input voltage is 19 volts, so you got silver or gray. So I guess we got gray because that's what's checked. We've got RAM. We've got 32 gigs. They sell it pre-configured with up to 64, which I think is your max. What they call ROM is read-only memory. Is not what a hard drive is. That read-only. So I don't know what's going on in Asia, why they think that means NVMe or solid state or storage. ROM is a Blu-ray disc or a DVD or a CD. That would be a ROM. Well, technically it's a worm. You write once and read many. WORM. ROM would be like a chip that gets soldered onto a board. So this is, we keep seeing this over and over, this misuse of the technology terms. But what they mean here is SSD. It's still 3 letters. It's just the wrong 3 letters. And it shows this one has a 1 terabyte SSD. And then it says it's for the US plug or Japanese plug or Australian plug here. No CPU information at all. So you know me, I'll get a marker and I'll write on it because I won't remember. The whole time I thought this was an 11900. And on the bottom of the unit, it does show the CPU right here on the sticker is a 13900K. But you have to get it out of the box, but at least it is on there. All right, let's get back over to camera 1 and over to our chat room and see what questions you have for me while we're waiting for this to update. I mean, it's dead silent. I can't get over that. David Graham says that disassembly would be hard for a layman. You know, to each their own. Some people are more comfortable than others, but it's definitely a little bit more complex than it should be, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of the rubber feet covering the screws right out of the gate. And, you know, AceMagic has had some designs in the past where they were very difficult to get into the units, like the M1A, that Starship thing. Forget about it. You're not getting in there. The Cube, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. 2 quick access panels, no tools needed. So they seem to go one extreme to the other. On the other hand, at this price point, buy it the way you want it. Then you don't have to get into it at all. Terrell Cochran says, I forgot to disconnect my network cable when I redid my computer, and even using Rufus, it forces a Microsoft account. That is true, yes. I mean, you can still like do the bypass NRO thing, you know, but regardless, it's just a lot easier. Just unplug the cable. So easy. The good news is when you get to the point that you realize, oh crap, I've left my cable plugged in, you can just unplug power from the computer, unplug your network cable, and then plug power back into the computer and turn it back on again. It won't cause you any harm. And then go through your setup. So not the end of the world. Frank Jimmy joins us, says hello. Welcome in, Frank. Brian Weber says he likes the taskbar on the left side. Yeah, well, you know, it's sort of like, who's your favorite James Bond? Probably the first one you saw. If you're older, you probably like Sean Connery. If you're my age, you like Roger Moore. If you're younger, you might prefer Pierce Brosnan or Timothy Dalton.
Just FYI, I fixed all the links. That was really confusing because they were supposed to send us the. Obviously, it's not. So I fixed all the links.
Oh, they were supposed to send us the 1100.
They were.
Well, it didn't help that nothing on the box.
Yes.
There's an oversight there we want to make them aware of.
Yeah.
Boy, the top of this unit gets really warm.
Really?
Well, it's not hot. It's just warm. You want to feel it?
It's not. No. Really?
Eh? Maybe it's just me.
Maybe it's just you.
Was that all you came down to tell me? You got the links fixed?
Yeah, I got the links.
All right, thank you. Andy's impressed I could get this back together without any leftover parts. Taking it apart's the easy thing. It's always putting it back together. Thomas says he's never heard of the M.2 brand. Yeah, it's quite often we see these brands from the lesser known brand names of PC manufacturers, AceMagic, Camrui, Wowie, Paladin, that are using what may be more familiar brands to them in East Asia that we don't have here in the United States. Like, you're not going to go on Amazon and buy one of these NVMe drives. Given that, it is supposedly Gen 3, so we're going to check everything out now, because I was looking at all the specs on the 11900 earlier. I would think this one would be Gen 4 if it's a 13, though, so we can check that. So let me grab my utilities flash drive. I can at least run Crystal Disk Info while the updates are running. If we run a benchmark, it's not going to be accurate since the drive is being used to download and install updates. We need 100% of the drive's attention for an accurate benchmark. But let me jump back over here right quick. And let me go full screen on my side. Okay. Here. And you know, we're going to start using the new Uncle Carrie's Windows 11 optimizer. Let's copy that over. And I'll put VLC on this. Copy that over. We can take a look at CPU-Z, so we'll copy that over. Then under PC testing software, we want Crystal Disk Info. This should be the latest version. And Crystal Disk Mark. These are both, in fact, everything you see here is a portable piece of software except VLC. And that's just a media player. So when the customer wants to play any video or audio, it's not going to use Microsoft Media Player and spy on you and all the other nonsense and pop-ups that come up. If we want to, we can even copy Cinebench over here, which is a pretty big app. And again, we have a portable version and hardware info version 3832, which monitors temps. So that puts all of our tools on the desktop, which means it should be clear for me to now go ahead and unplug my flash drive and put it back in the drawer. And let's start with Crystal Disk Info. What can it tell us about the drive? thing's responsive. I mean, I'm clicking on things and it's popping. All right, that doesn't tell us anything other than it's a 1 terabyte drive. I know the 1T stands for 1 terabyte and it's represented in the storage capacity here. And let's see, we are PCIe Gen 3 on the motherboard, but Gen 4, hold on, this doesn't tell us the motherboard. This tells us what the drive is capable of versus what's. So this drive is the M.2 drive. You see how it says current mode and supported mode. So what that means, now that I've learned this the hard way, so that number that says supported mode, the number on the right, the PCIe 4, that's telling us the M.2 drive is a Gen 4 drive. But it says on the left side, current mode. That's telling you what speed it's running at. So it's running at Gen 3. For some reason, this motherboard is running at Gen 3, which I don't understand. And I'm curious on this model if that's correct. On the 11900, I understand, but on the 13900, why would that be Gen 4? Let me jump back over here. Let's go to the Amazon page. Well, no, let's go to the AceMagic page. Is it Gen 3 regardless? So it's a little confusing that they call the M1. They don't change it. They don't call it something else. If it's got an 11900 versus a 13900, like maybe one's an M2, I don't know, M1 something. i9 11900H. Let me go back to share the screen with you guys because maybe you'll see something I don't see. M1 pre-ordered will begin shipping on November 10th. So this isn't even shipping yet. Don't see a 13900H option here. Let's try Amazon. Because I know I saw it here. Okay, 13900H. 32 gig, this is what they sent us here. And does it say what generation the NVMe is in these specs? A lot of times manufacturers leave it out. No, they've already run Cinebench on it for us. Yeah, it's saying it's PCIe 3, so generation 3, which is what we have. I mean, they're not wrong. I would have just thought that one of those ports would have been Gen 4. One M2 2280 NVMe slot and one M2 2280 SATA or NVMe. Oh, that's nice. If you want to go slower, you can go SATA. I don't know which one's which, though. Is it the top one or the bottom one that's SATA? I mean, we're not in SATA mode, but neither one of them is Gen 4. It's all Gen 3. I don't think the average person can tell the difference anyway. In fact, outside of benchmarking software, I couldn't even tell the difference. I have to have a piece of software tell me whether or not I should be happy or not. It's a twisted world we live in. A little bit about the Wi-Fi, a little bit about the storage, or sorry, the interface. The LAN obviously works at 2500, but it will also work at 1 gig 110. It's backwards compatible. It looks a little bit smaller in this picture than it really is, but that's okay. It is small. It is Windows 11 Pro, not Home. It shows it's in gray. Yeah, this looks like our guy right here. Huh. The problem is that's not a great, I mean, this is what I would expect it to sell for, okay? So when I'm looking at prices that are 50% less than this, I'm getting super excited. So I wonder if that coupon code works on this as well, or if they'll be putting this on sale anytime soon. You see, it's not even available yet because it won't ship. If we ordered it today, it's not going to be here till about the 13th or the 15th, which is about a week away. So we're very close to this being released. So we're getting an early look at it, which I appreciate AceMagic has thought of us for this so that we can evaluate it. But I don't know that that's the price it's going to stay at, because the other one is so aggressively priced. Let me go back over to AceMagic here and let's take another look and see, because that's a crazy good price for a bare bones unit. And even with 32 gig and 1 terabyte, it's not worth a $500 difference just to go up 2 generations on the CPU, with everything else essentially being the same outside of the color. So something's not right here, but it may be because it's not available yet. Like it's not for sale yet officially. They're pre-ordering it. It's a 2-year warranty, but I think that's good to know, with 30-day money back, and you can pay with PayPal if you want to order direct from AceMagic. So my question now is, if we go to Mini PC, do we see the M1? By the way, Mara loves the tank. She's using that upstairs. This is super easy. This panel comes off to change out the RAM, and the other panel, you just click a release button and you have access to your NVMe. This bad boy was about $1,500. Are you kidding? They're selling it now for $750. It may be worth looking at AceMagic's website, because these prices are they're really good. Look at that. If you wait till Black Friday and you're going to try and buy when everybody else is, then you run into inventory problems where they're sold out. So yeah, these are all great prices. I wonder why they're having a sale. Is it a pre-Black Friday sale? But they're right around the $300 price point, more than not. Look, there's that M2A. Remember this bad boy? And it looks like it's completely sold out. Yeah, sold out. But it doesn't mean they're always going to be sold out. So you might want to check back. There's the K1. I was looking for the M1. Matrix M1. See, that says M1, but it doesn't say Matrix M1. I wonder if that's the difference. Here, they both say M1. That's very confusing. Okay, so here's the model. Are you serious? That's got to be bare bones. Let's make sure. Yeah, that's box. It's hard to tell, but bare bone is selected. So with the way it's configured on my desk right now, with 32 gigs and 1 terabyte, it's $459. I think you'll agree that's a fantastic price. And if you want to max it out with 64 gigs and 2 terabyte, you just add another $100. That may be worth doing. On the other hand, I could see where, once you exceed $500, you might be thinking, it's a little rich. But buy it once, cry once. You got that 2-year warranty, you've got that 30-day money-back guarantee, and you've got free shipping, and you can pay with PayPal. And PayPal has even their own financing options where you can pay in monthly installments with no interest. If you qualify for it, you don't need much in the way of credit for that. And you have PayPal's guarantee. If you feel like something's gone sideways and customer service isn't helpful, you have another customer service to deal with in a worst case scenario. Like, I'm just painting, like, what would be the worst that could happen, right? So you got coverage multiple ways. So you got AceMagic's coverage, and if they let you down, you've got PayPal's coverage, plus the convenience of making payments through PayPal's system, which is not as, the credit requirements for the easy installments is much, much lower than like traditional credit. And as long as you make your payments on time, there's no interest or fees, and it makes it much more attainable. But yeah, look at that. If you want to put your own RAM in storage and your own operating system on it, you're only at $329. And that is the color we have here. So it looks like it's only in one color. So we were looking at the wrong page. This is what happens when we go live and we have a little miscommunication. But one of the things you'll see many PC manufacturers and laptop manufacturers do is fail to mention the generation of the performance of the drive. And that lack of data is usually for a reason, because they don't want to boast that it's Gen 3. right? That's nothing to boast about. That's kind of the minimum. But it could be worse, could be SATA. Now, if you compare that, we're looking at 14 cores versus 8, 16 threads versus 20 between the 11900 and 13900. Slightly faster turbo, same amount of cache. They're very similar chips. You see the HK version is a little faster than the regular H version. And when we look at the multi-core performance, which I don't know what they're using to measure this with, we see a score of 12128 on the 11900H and 15073. So it's about a 20% difference. A little bit about their cooling. Oh, those are both outputs, and the input does come in from the bottom. Good. Okay, that answers that. They keep calling storage. They keep calling SSDs ROM, and they keep leaving the generation off. This is very frustrating because it doesn't seem to matter, for the most part, if the computer is made by one of these lesser known brand names here in the USA that's originating out of East Asia. They all copy what the other one's doing. So when the other one gets it wrong, the rest of them get it wrong. When you try and correct them, they say, well, we're just doing what everybody else is doing. It's the most frustrating. I'm like, okay, all right, you guys could call it ASH for all I care. But that's not what it's called. It's called SSD. It's not like you don't have room for those 3 letters on the packaging. So it's a minor little nitpick. It doesn't really matter. I'm probably the only one who even notices. There's your, yeah, Wi-Fi 6E, we confirmed. All right, very good. Now, we know what we've got in front of us. This is the carry way, you know, put it in front of me, I'll figure it out. Sometimes they make my job easier by including the information on the box. Let me just check on our updates. I see if it's done yet. No, it's still working. We're going to let this just finish updating. We'll restart, and then we'll go ahead and run our crystal disk mark on it. In the meantime, let me get back over to the chat and see what's on your mind. Richard DeFries wants to know if the minor problems with the Windows 11 optimizer have been fixed. Well, you guys have to tell us, right? We don't know. Once we're made aware of it, there's an update. You know, Nick will work on it, release it, but then somebody else may have something different. So if you have the latest update of the Windows 11 optimizer and you're having any issues with it, please email Nick, that's service@d7xtech.com, and let him know. And he'll work with you to resolve it, and then there'll be another update. If you want to wait until after the first of the year, it should be golden by then. So don't ask me every week. I'm going to tell you right now, Richard, this is going to take some time if you're interested in working out every potential little bug we find. What we're interested in personally are any potential bugs you find. If you don't find any, then don't expect us to update anything for you. But as far as we know, it works without issue. That doesn't necessarily mean we might not change some things, but as far as any bug updates or anything like that, we cannot tell you that. That is only something you and each individual user can report back to us. And then if there is an issue that we're made aware of that we can verify is on our side, we'll address it and update it. And if you want to wait till after the first of the year, all of that should be behind us by then. John Paul Bacon mentions with the PayPal payment, you can also split your payment over multiple credit cards if you wanted to split that up. I didn't know that. That's good to know. Mark Leibowitz said, would it be fun to have the AceMagic M2A and the Netgear router that also looks like a spaceship? TP-Link router. Yeah, we put those side by side on the table a few months ago. They look like they go together, don't they? John Paul Bacon says a Gen 4 by 4 NVMe M.2 and a Gen 3 slot won't hamper your performance. Well, then why does Gen 4 exist? That doesn't even make any sense to me there. I'm going to disagree respectfully. Generation 4 is twice as fast as Generation 3. That doesn't mean the drive is, but the technology is. Now, whether or not anybody notices depends on what they do with their computer. It very well could hamper their performance under certain use case scenarios that are not common. But if you're saying, like, if you're the average user, you can't tell the difference, then I agree with you. But there's a reason Generation 4 exists. And there's also a Generation 5. And each generation doubles the maximum transfer speed. That doesn't mean the drives themselves do. Wayne Ellison said his optimizer ran as optimized, as advertised. Thank you, Wayne. Again, we appreciate all the feedback, whether it's, hey, no problems, or yeah, we have some problems. And the ones that have problems are the most valuable feedback to us, so we can identify and recognize, verify that there is a problem there and address it. We do want it to be perfect, but it's not going to happen overnight. So if you want perfect, give us a couple months. Mark Leibowitz said, AceMagic, the answer to the boring mini PC. Well, I'd say for the price, right? Because there's nothing about this that stands out. You know, not like the M1A or, you know, M2A, whatever it is, the flashy AceMagic. This is very much can be used in a business. It's subtle, it's out of the way, it doesn't take up much desktop real estate. And really where it's shining is not in its design, it's in its price. So it's really a question of, you know, value for dollar here. At least that's the way I see it. You could put any name on top of this, and I wouldn't think anything of it by walking by it. But if I'm the one paying for it, I'll definitely notice it on the receipt. You got all that for this much? Where'd you buy that? Yeah, it almost seems a little too good to be true. Andy says, well, it only has DDR4 RAM. Well, DDR5 wouldn't benefit you. If you put DDR5 in this, it would cost more money, but it wouldn't perform any better. You'd have to go to maybe on the AMD side, that would make more sense, where you're going to see the benefit in the internal graphics. With a machine like this at 13th gen, I think that's pretty much right when they introduced DDR5 was 12, 13, 14th gen Intel. And unless you're at the super high end of it, like this is a 13900HA, you won't see any difference at all. And if this did have DDR5, it wouldn't be able to sell this cheap, and the performance difference would be so teeny tiny, it wouldn't justify the price you're paying to get that little bit of performance. So if I were designing this, I wouldn't have changed it. I would have made an access panel on the top, you know, to get to the internal components, but everything else seems fine. I also wouldn't have the rubber feet covering up the screws, so there's two suggestions for improvement. And there's no USB 4 on this either. It's all going to be USB 3.1, 3.2. And it will support up to 3 monitors at 4K 60 Hertz at the same time. And at that price point, to get something that's that capable, yeah, I mean, you keep wanting to add more fancy stuff, you're just going to keep building the price up. So, you know, if we wanted to have Gen 5 NVMe on here, everything's possible. It's just at some point, where do you say, okay, now this thing's going to sell for $1,200 and we're not going to sell as many units than if we sell it at $400, let's say. So it becomes a question of, when you're designing a mini PC, it's a question of the looks, the materials, the performance, the RAM, the storage, how many ports you're going to have for USB, if it's going to have Thunderbolt, if it's going to have USB 4. And at some point, you're going to see that price keep going up and up and up, and you start scratching your head. Your boss might have said, look,
We need this built in out the door for under $400 or something. I don't know. And so now you're faced with this challenge as the engineer. How do you get there without, let's say this came with 8 gig of RAM, that would lower the price, but would also handicap the performance. So where do you find balance? And that's why it's great that you have, the option to get this in bare bones, which I've never seen AceMagic do before. And then you can spec it out as, if you want to spend $400 on RAM and storage on your $400 computer, that's not a choice most people would make, but you could. And I appreciate choices. I like being able to make my own decisions. My decision would be to just buy it spec'd out the way I already want it, because it will be cheaper, and I don't have to worry about breaking anything or voiding my warranty by causing some damage. Just keep it all under warranty, and the parts are going to be cheaper. If you want the highest performance parts, you probably want to build your own computer. That would be my best advice for you, is still build your own if you're of that mindset. But that's just my opinion. That's the advice I would give to a customer that wants to be ultra picky like that, is this isn't for you. This is for, I want the most I can get for the dollar. So you can have that, or you can be picky. Pick one. But that's the logic behind it, if that helps you understand why these configurations exist. Andy says, Carrie, I'm sorry I don't speak Intel. That's fine. I mean, you might enjoy Chevy and I might enjoy Ford. You might like Nissan, I might like Toyota. You might like chocolate, I like vanilla. It's all good, nothing to apologize for. Enjoy your preferences. That's why they're there. I'm not here to tell you what your preferences are. I'm here to tell you what my preferences are. It's my channel. You don't have to agree with it. And you don't have to answer my customers' questions and support my customers either, and worry about paying my bills at the end of the month. So we have different reasonings, but it's all good. Jim Kenny says, what's the difference between Type-C USB and USB 4? Well, USB 4 is the transmission protocol or language, and USB Type-C is the form of the connector. So we can take any USB cable that is a traditional USB cable, I think I have an adapter somewhere in here. I can never find what I'm looking for when I'm looking for it. But essentially, it's just the type of connector. When we talk about Type A, Type B, or Type C USB, we're talking about the plug, the design of the plug. Then when we talk about USB 3 versus USB 4, or Generation 3 NVMe versus Generation 4 NVMe versus Generation 5 NVMe, that's the transmission protocols. And so the transmission protocols, they pretty much double every single time. So if we're talking about NVMe drives, Generation 3 protocol is half the potential top speed of Generation 4, which is half of the potential top speed of Generation 5. So as long as you have a Generation 5 slot with a Generation 5 drive that maxes out all of that potential, you can absorb and consume as much of that transmission protocols as possible, saturate the bus. And the same is true with USB. So we can take a USB flash drive and we can adapt it from USB A to USB Type-C, and then we can plug it in our phones and back up our phones on Type-C. You don't have to buy a Type-C flash drive. It's just an adapter. And that little adapter is automatically hardwired into some computers, maybe your computer you have now, to your motherboard, depending on what chipset you have, to work at USB 3.1, 3.2, 3.0, USB 4, or USB 4 version 2, which just came out. So USB 3 would be like 5 gigabits per second. 3.2, I believe, is 10 gigabits per second. See how it doubles? Then there's 3.2 Gen 2 by 2 that doubles to 20, which is pretty rare to see that. Then USB 4 doubles that to 40. USB 4.2 doubles that to 80 gigabits per second. And that's all done through the way that you're plugging it in, whether that's type A or type C. USB 4 is not available on type A. You can't go back the other way because USB-C has about 12 or 16 cables inside of it. USB 4 is just 4 cables. So there's only so much data that can transfer over 4 lanes, right? Only so many cars can travel in 4 lanes of traffic versus 16 lanes of traffic. I have to double check how many wires are in a USB-C. And then there are USB-C, just to add some confusion, there are USB-C charging cables, where the USB-C cable, basically when you cut it open, it only has a couple wires in it. And that's only for charging. It won't work for any data transfer. Those are your cheapest cables. So USB-C does get confusing, because a USB-C, which is also could be Thunderbolt capable, because Thunderbolt 4 and 5 share the USB Type-C connector. Those cables can cost $40 to $60 just for the cable. They look the same if you don't know what you're buying. So you could buy a $3 charging cable, and then your USB doesn't work at all. All it's doing is charging your phone. That's why you got a pack of 10 for $4. If you want a USB-C data transfer cable, depending on what USB-C it's certified for, will determine the maximum speed that cable can do. Just like with Ethernet cables, just like with any other kind of cable length and the version of the cable. You know, you might have an HDMI cable plugged into your monitor that you've had for 10 years. You have no idea. You are completely out of the loop that you are running an obsolete cable that may not be giving you the best picture quality or standard to your monitor. So oftentimes people, ignorance is bliss. They go buy a new monitor and they set it up and they run their old HDMI cable or even their old DisplayPort cable, and it doesn't work, and they go take the monitor back to the store. And for some reason, they won't spend $8 to just buy a new HDMI cable. It boggles my mind how someone will spend $1,000 for a brand new monitor, and they absolutely stubbornly refuse to replace an $8 10-year-old HDMI cable or DisplayPort cable. When you change your monitor, change your HDMI cable. For the love of all that's holy. Because they're more capable today. They do more. Those HDMI cable versions, if you want to hit Google and ask it to explain what all the different versions of HDMI mean, you'll understand the progress and evolution of the cable. It looks the same, but inside it's different. And of course, they'll be priced accordingly. The older cables, they can't give them away. So you're like, hey, HDMI cable for $2. Yeah, and if you're using it on really old stuff, you'll probably be happy with your purchase. But if you're just being cheap and you don't want to spend the $8, you're just going to keep running back and forth to the store like you got all the time in the world and nothing else to do. I just want to buy it, get it done. So just a little piece of advice, take it or leave it. If you want to ask me how I know, been there, done that, don't want to do it anymore. Okay. John Paul Bacon mentions USB 4 is only Type-C. That's correct, because it's not possible, as I already mentioned, for USB 4 to work under the 4 wires of USB-A. It's not going to work. There's not enough lanes of data traffic. Let me see. Let me just Google. I don't have to wonder how many wires in a USB 4 cable. 24 wires. See, even though if you look at a USB 4, USB-C type, a USB-C, a USB 4 Type-C cable, there's no such thing as USB 4 Type-A cable, because you'd be 20 wires too short. You can cut a cable open and look at it. There's 4 wires in a standard USB cable. On these cables, you're looking at 24 pins. And that's going to provide power delivery. That's going to provide data transfer. They're carrying a lot of stuff. The multiple data lanes required for DisplayPort, all that stuff. So you're looking at 24 wires, even though if the thickness of the cable is nearly identical to the thickness of a 4-wire USB Type-A cable. So that's why anything that's USB Type A will work in Type C because it's limited by the form of the connector, but it doesn't work the other way around. Or if it did work, it would be painfully slow. I don't think it will work. So anyway, just it does get a little confusing, and you're not alone in that. The USB consortium, they could do a lot better job of simplifying things. All right, how are we doing over here? Is this ready? Oh, we're still downloading, I guess. Why is that taking so long? Let me take a quick look over here. Oh, remember before when it got stuck on the other computer and I unplugged my Ethernet cable? You watch the bottom right corner there, it turns into a globe. I plug it back in, it'll reestablish an IP, and it'll come back over to Windows Update and say, hello. That might wake it up. It will eventually wake up. I'm not sure why Microsoft Update servers do that. But after, it's reestablished the IP again, it's sort of, at least in my experience, wakes this up and kicks it back to downloading. Because it's been sitting there at 4% for some time. And if I'm really impatient, I can just restart the computer. But sometimes my first attempt is to just unplug that Ethernet cable and then wait just a minute or two to see if this bumps up. If we're stuck, we're probably waiting in some kind of a queue at Microsoft. So let's just restart it just because I'm impatient. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you can. So we'll let that restart, and then maybe, if we want to check for updates again, or if we want to just start testing it, because I don't want to wait all day for updates during today's video. So anyway, yeah, Type C is the latest and greatest type of USB connector, and it's very universal. So if you're traveling with let's say a USB-C charger for your laptop, that should also be the same charger that should work to charge, let's say maybe you've got a toothbrush or a shaver, a laptop, a cell phone. So when you're traveling, you just bring the one charger and the one cable. If everything else you've got is Type C, you don't have to individually say, well, this is the adapter for this device, this is the adapter for that device. Oh, I left an adapter back at the hotel. This keeps everything so simple. And we are working our way towards that. In fact, the European Union requiring Apple to use the Type C connector instead of Lightning was there because it's creating a lot of e-waste. Apple doing something that didn't justifiably, on an engineering side of things, do anything the USB-C doesn't already do. So thankfully, it forced Apple into conformity. So that way, if you're traveling with an iPhone, you can still use the USB-C charger that works on your Windows computer, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the panacea, this perfect world where we can all agree that's the one charging cable we're going to use for everything. And remember, a charging cable and a data cable will do charging and data sync, and a charging cable just does charging and nothing more. Bikeman said the Windows updates are always slow for some reason, even though I have 1 gig internet connection. The freeway is always backed up, even though I have a really fast car. That's basically what you're saying. I am the only one trying to access Windows, Microsoft's update server. No, millions of people around the world are probably accessing it at any given time. So you got to remember there's other people on the planet, and that's going to definitely affect both time of day and the performance you see from the Windows Update server. Plus, Microsoft has to do maintenance on it, right? So if they're doing maintenance on it, there's all these other reasons the world's going around you. Just be aware of that. I can't tell you specifically why it's slow right now, but sometimes it's fast, just like the freeway. I get on the freeway and no explanation, it's backed up with traffic. I have no idea why. And get on the freeway another time, same freeway, same car, and I can fly down that freeway. Why? I don't know. No idea, but If I was the only one in the world, I would always get on the freeway and it would always just be empty and I could drive whatever I wanted to. But unfortunately, there are other people with cars. So just keep that in mind. John wants to know, can I get a Type C to a 4 Type C? Can I get a 1 type? I don't know what you mean, John. You literally wrote, can I get a 1 Type C to 4 Type C? What does that even mean? Are you asking if you can split one USB Type C into 4 inputs? Then you're looking for a USB-C hub? Is that what you're asking for? Probably a docking station on Thunderbolt will do that. Let me just take a quick look at Amazon, and I'm assuming I'm understanding your question correctly. If you're asking, can you buy a USB-C hub? Let's see, USB-C hub. There are some USB-C hubs. I don't know that you can get 4 USB-Cs. You get a couple of A's and another C. It depends what you're plugging it into. And you know, if the USB-C, here we go. I did find one. Let's jump over here real quick. Here's a Van Greet USB-C hub. That's USB 3.2 Gen 2 that are 10 gigs each, up to 100 watt power delivery, and that's assuming you're plugging this in to something that can provide that. Okay, because what you're asking to do is you're asking to take this one data, you know, if this can do 10 gigs per second, let's just say out of that one plug, and you split it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plugs. Oh, and there's HDMI. You're going to crawl. Every one of these is going to be painfully slow if you're using them at the same time. Individually, 10 to 10 or 10 to 7 or 8, you do the math. You're going to drop your speeds down. If you utilize more of these at the same time, it's going to become painfully slow. So yes, technically it's possible, but at what cost? You're going to spend $50 for the device. You're going to have a lot more ports, and every port is going to split in half the speed the more you use them simultaneously. So cut it in half once, cut it in half again, do that 8 times. And what you're going to be left with for bandwidth, it'd be like, you know, can I have 18 different faucets in my house and turn all 18 faucets on at the same time, but still have good water pressure? No. No, every single faucet you turn on lowers your water pressure. So you got to keep all that in mind. Now this is intended for a MacBook, which probably has a higher end USB-C than a generic Windows PC. So they do make them, but how it works for you depends again on what you're plugging into it, what you're plugging it into and what it's capable of, and how many of those things you're using at the same time. It may not all work, but because of all the variety and variables, you'd have to try it to see. And if it didn't work, you know, you've got a 30-day return window. So send it back to Amazon and let us know. So I'm assuming I understood your question, but I may not have. John says you were talking about having multiple devices all using USB Type-C. Yeah, so in other words, let's say I'm going to take a trip and I'm packing my luggage, okay? And I've got a USB-C charger for my phone. And that USB-C charger isn't quite powerful enough to power my USB-C powered laptop. So instead of taking the charger for the phone, I'll take the charger for the laptop. I'm going to charge one thing at a time. I'm not charging everything simultaneously. That's insane. It would generate a lot of heat. I mean, if you want a fire, go ahead. But once my phone is charged up, I can plug in my shaver, let that charge up. When that's charged up, I can plug in a toothbrush. When that's charged up, I can plug in my laptop. When that's charged up, I can put it back in my suitcase. It's not like these charges are going to wear out in 20 minutes. I'll probably make sure I charge everything up before I leave for the trip. And I'll have to be gone a few days before I need to charge anything other than my phone. in my experience. And depending on how much I use the laptop, I could just leave it plugged in, say I'm at a hotel, leave it plugged in, and not even worry about charging it, just run it off power if I'm not needing to charge the phone or the shaver. But everything I would do one at a time. I wouldn't try and do multiples. But that's just me, that's my personal preference. I like to sort of control everything, and I don't trust having all of the desk space I would need to put every rechargeable device up on the bedside table and then have it all knock off and hit the floor, get cables snagged, have multiple cables to each device. That's defeating the whole purpose of the convenience of one cable, one charger. So maybe that's your question. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions about the AceMagic? Let me go back over here and let's take another look now that we've rebooted. Rather than go back to Windows Update again. Where did my video go? Hold on a second. Go full screen on that one more time. All right, let's try, first of all, let's run Crystal Disk Info here. And Crystal Disk Mark is what I mean. And see just what level of Gen 3 we have. Maximum would be about 3,600 megabytes per second. Just because it's Gen 3 doesn't mean it runs at Gen 3 max. So let's find out here. I mean, we still could be downloading Windows updates in the background. So the good news is, it's a Gen 4 drive. So this Gen 4 drive should be capable of hitting, I would guess, about 5,000 megabytes per second. So given it's plugged into a Gen 3 slot, it makes sense. It should more or less saturate the bus. And that's about the maximum speed that that motherboard's going to deliver, even though the drive can go faster. In much the same way, my fast car on the freeway is slowing down because of the cars in front of me. I might have a V8 engine, but the guy in front of me has a 4-cylinder Honda Civic. We ain't going nowhere for a while. So as long as I'm stuck behind that guy, even though my car's more capable, I can't go faster than the car in front of me. In much the same way, this NVMe drive is like my car. It's capable of doing 5,000, let's just say, but we can only hit 3484 maximum because that's what we're plugged into. That's what the fastest, what we're plugged into can deliver to us. So our bottleneck is on the chipset of the motherboard. In this instance, it's not on the drive. That's good to know. So we are getting more or less our maximum allowed saturation of the Gen 3 NVMe. So that's a good sign. That's what we want to see. And we should see similar maximum speeds on the right, because again, we're not using the full potential of the drive when it's plugged into a Gen 3 slot. So I expect that to be pretty much near the same. Let's see. Because I'm not familiar with the manufacturer, I'm not certain, but that's what I would expect. Okay, it's getting ready. Here we go. Yeah, that's the way it should be. So that looks good. I'm going to let that run, and while it runs, I'm going to glance over here at the chat room again. Remington in the chat said the word I was looking for is bottlenecking. The buses will run at the slowest device, at the speed of the slowest device in the chain, whether it's the source, the cable, or the receiver receiving. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Charlie's asking about a recent Windows update enabling BitLocker by accident. Yeah, this was in the news about a Windows update that was requiring people, it wasn't enabling BitLocker, it was requiring people to enter their BitLocker key for some reason. And if I search over here, let's say Windows update BitLocker, we'd probably find some news articles on this. What it does is it triggers your BitLocker recovery. So if you were never using BitLocker, I don't use it, for example, it wouldn't affect me because I don't use it. And if I was using it, I would know my key. See, here's the problem. We have people have no clue what they're doing. They're following advice from content creators going, oh yeah, you need Windows Pro. It's so much better because you can use BitLocker. And then These people believe them, and they lock themselves out of their computer because they have no concept of what they just done, because they just listened to some content creator who they can't sue, who they can't call and talk to and say, can you help me? There's no recourse for the content creator who just gave their audience some of the worst advice I'd ever heard. And it's all over YouTube, it's all over the network. So you really have to be responsible for the decisions you make. You can't blame the content creator. You have yourself to blame for you choosing to believe them with no recourse, no accountability. There's no liability on the content creator. You didn't pay them, they owe you nothing. So if they gave you free advice and that free advice caused you harm, shame on you. You made a bad decision for listening to that content creator. So what happens is people have got BitLocker turned on, and they manually turned it on because somebody told them to, when they had no idea what they were doing, what BitLocker is and what the potential consequences were. The number one way people lock themselves out of their computer today is they unwittingly turn on BitLocker because somebody advised them to, but nobody really gave them the importance or the key, or it went in one ear and out the other, and now they've locked out and there's nothing anybody can do to help you, ever. So a recent Windows update is what we're talking about in the chat room. And what happened was it started the BitLocker recovery process, which means when the system boots up, it asks you for your key. Now, if you have a Microsoft account, you could log into your Microsoft account with your phone or another device to get your key. But if you don't have a Microsoft account and you didn't make a copy of your key, too bad. Your data's gone. That's why we make backups, especially if you're going to use BitLocker. And I would say we use backups, especially if you use a computer. It doesn't matter if it's Linux or Mac or Windows. If you're using a computer and you have any data you care about on it, between hackers and part component failures and power outages and lightning strikes, natural disasters, if you're not making copies of important data, then you clearly are telling the world you don't care what happens to the data if you lost it. I imagine you're the same kind of person that has one key for your car, right? You have one key to get into your house, and if you lose the key, you're never getting into your house from the front door ever again. If you lose the spare key, you don't have a spare key. You have one key to your car. You lose that key, you're never driving that car again. I mean, at that point, there are locksmiths you can call, but there's no locksmith for BitLocker. Does not exist. You are forever locked out. So the company, Microsoft, did release an emergency update back in May to address something very similar. So we've been through this before. The best advice I have given you is don't use BitLocker unless you have a backup. If you're not willing to do one, don't do the other one. So shouldn't be anything to worry about. It's news that should not affect any of you. Have any of you in the chat room been affected by this? The October Windows Update asking you for your recovery key? I'm just, an informal survey, because most people shouldn't be using BitLocker unless you are required to through government regulation or the company you work for. And the company you work for would be their problem, not your problem, if this were to happen. Nobody watching my video should be affected by this unless you have a backup, which you would know to do. So it's not an issue. It's like me saying, well, people who drink poison are getting sick. Why are you drinking poison? Well, some content creator said it was good for me. Sometimes I just don't I don't understand what's happening through the minds of the end users. It's getting a little wonky out there with why did you even do that to begin with? Why did you turn BitLocker on? And you don't have a backup? Like, do you not understand now you understand it, I guess. Some of us have to learn the hard way. Let me log in here again. How are we doing over here? Okay, so we've got final numbers. And the numbers look good. Those are good Gen 3 numbers. So let's save this. Save the image. We'll say Crystal Disk Mark. It's a JPEG on the desktop. Now, with regards to, let's say, Cinebench and temps, Let's bring up hardware info. Start this bad boy up. Just want sensors. And we're going to go over here, find our temps. So even through our testing now, it's gotten pretty warm. However, let's see, core temperatures right here. If the CPU always stays down in the 50s and 60s, then it tells me you're barely using it. So we do want to see it get warm when we're really working the CPU. It's like if you start running around the block, I expect to see you start running out of breath and sweating. That's your body cooling itself down. Now let me grab Cinebench. What we don't want you to do is die from heat exhaustion or pass out. That would be overheating. So it's okay to get hot, let your cooling system run, and that should only happen when you're exerting a lot of effort. And especially over a period of time, it should build and build. At some point, you're going to need to stop and take a rest. With a computer, if the cooling system's good, it shouldn't need to stop and take a rest. But let's go ahead and see what happens here and also measure noise as well, because this will crank those fans up. This starts a 10-minute warm-up. Literally, it's warm up. This is just a CPU test, despite the fact you're seeing graphics. Those are graphics being developed by the CPU, not the graphic card. So we're measuring CPU performance only. And as we look down this list, we have our current temps in the 70 degrees Celsius range. We'd like to keep these down below, on a mini PC, down below 90 would be preferential. However, even if it peaks out higher than that, we can safely run this CPU at 100 degrees Celsius. You just don't want to do that over a long period of time, because what you're going to do is cause excessive and premature wear onto the silicon, which will degrade it and cause its early demise. Now, early demise may be, well, maybe it only lasts for 20 years versus 80 years or 70 years if it's kept within reasonable temps, which would be anywhere from 20 degrees Celsius up to, I'd say, 90. But if it's going to even run at 90 all the time, it sounds like you underbought a computer. Like it's like you bought a really low-powered, cheap car, and your foot is always to the floor, and your gas mileage is always terrible because you're putting too much stuff in the car, you're hauling too much, you bought the wrong car for the way that you're using it. But if you're like most people and you use the car for multiple purposes, primarily to take yourself places or yourself and somebody else somewhere, you buy a car that has enough seats that gets you the kind of gas mileage and the amount of power you need if you're towing a boat, or maybe you work in construction or delivery and you need a big, heavy not towing capacity, but weight capacity. And so there's a variety of choices made to meet the needs and budgets of everybody, and computers are no different. But so far, I'm seeing a max here of 90, and it's okay if it just hits 90 momentarily and then comes back down again. I start getting a little nervous personally when it exceeds 90. But where I'm going to get really concerned is if we're seeing 90 as sort of like the average. If our average is 90, we're having problems. I am starting to hear the fan a little bit, but it's really, really quiet. But yeah, if I shut up for a second, I can hear the fan running. So I'm not talking over it. Like, I'm not raising my voice. My voice is at the same tone it always is, and I barely hear it. But I definitely can notice it now, where before it was perfectly silent, at least to my old ears. So we're going to let that run. So let me come back over here to camera 1. And again, I'm happy to address whatever questions you've got here. Oh, Mara put up a survey on the chat. Nice. Zaphod said, I use BitLocker on some of my devices because my work requires it, but like you just said, it's kind of their problem. Exactly. If work requires it, work has an IT department to handle it.
What I was coming down to tell you is I put a survey. I just
I don't see the,
informal survey.
NOAA says 93%. That's all I see. Where's the rest of the survey? Oh, there it is. Have you been impacted by BitLocker recovery or used BitLocker? 7% said yes. Now, do we know how many people 7% is? Is it one person?
I can go. I was waiting for the results a little bit later.
Okay, I think it's probably just one person. And by the way, you can use BitLocker. Just have a backup. In fact, you should not use BitLocker, and you should still have a backup. And if you don't, it's not my problem. You'll just be one of those people that joins in and claims to be a victim because you made bad decisions. And maybe that, again, will be your learning lesson, and you won't do that in the future, but what's gone is gone, and you will never get it back. That's a lesson that'll probably stay with you. It's better to have a backup you never need than to need one you never made. I have insurance on my car. Haven't used it. I hope I never have to. But I'm not going to call the insurance company and say, take the insurance off. You know how Murphy's Law works, don't you? Brian Weber said it has 47 votes. Any other questions about the AceMagic, other mini PCs, other items in the news that I can help clarify? The news wants to scare you. That's their job. If the news is just good news or no news, you're probably not going to click on it. If you don't click on it, they don't get paid. So every day, the news media, even if it's a tech website, they have to find another compelling way for you to engage that click for them to get paid. Every day. And the only way it stops is if you stop. You're doing it. If you stop doing it, they'll have to come up with another tactic. But so long as the masses keep falling for it every single day, it's never going to end until we, as the people they're reporting to, get wise and realize this is all clickbait. When they tell you, like recently in the news, an autonomous car, like one of the Waymo vehicles, they run the autonomous Waymos here in Phoenix, was involved in a car accident. Headlines. You read the details, the Waymo did nothing wrong. A driver not paying attention, coming the other way, collided with the Waymo, and there was nobody in the Waymo at the time. Whether they were drunk or looking at their phone and their car veered, that's not the headline, because the headline that says driver runs into autonomous car, you're not going to get clicks compared to autonomous car involved in accident. They're saying the exact same thing, but they're wording it in a way that you're like, oh, I knew those autonomous cars were going to be there. The autonomous car did nothing wrong, and it would have been no different if you were behind the wheel. You would have been a victim as much as anybody else, whether that was autonomous or not, because the other driver was out to hit it, basically. I'll try to say. So this is how the media works now. If you're watching the news, if you're looking at tech websites, it's clickbait after clickbait after clickbait. It's clever phrasing of words, so they're not exactly lying, but they're also not really giving you an honest, like, what are the odds this affects the average person kind of a... Nobody does that, by the way. No news agency says, as far as I can tell, this likely won't affect you. Or the odds of this having any effect on you are, you know, whatever they know about you and your data collection that they do, they should know, like, if they're passing some rule to have the National Guard out in Portland, that has no effect to anybody outside of Portland. So what do I care? Like, it's just one of these things like this. The idea that they do these headlines, make it out like it's impacting you. You should be aware of it. Really, it doesn't have any effect on you, and you don't need to worry about it. Since they don't do that for you as a service, because that would reduce the number of clicks and the amount of money they make, you have to do it for yourself. And if you're not quite sure, well, just ask us. I'll tell you straight up. Yes, this is something you should be prepared for, or you don't have to worry about it. Oh no, Mark Gaines says his Corsair IQ screen started glitching again, so I uninstalled it and let the Gigabyte software control it. So it's working with the Gigabyte software. That's interesting. Barry Klein said he ordered a hard copy of Mara's recent cookbook. He's expecting it Wednesday. Is it being printed on demand by Amazon? It is, yes. Thank you for ordering it. We hope you like it.
Thank you, Barry.
Did you order the paperback or the?
Perfect.
He said hard copy, which would mean not Kindle.
Correct.
Either way, it's the same book. And they're both print on demand. So
That is
the
correct.
answer is still yes. It's like, can you guess what I'm holding in my hand? There was a comedian, and he would, how did that joke work? The Amazing Jonathan. That was the comedian. And he would have an assistant, and he would blindfold her and say that she could read any mind. And I'll demonstrate. He would blindfold her, and he would say, can you guess what I'm holding in my hand? And he's got a baseball bat. Or no, he's got an ashtray. And she goes, is it a bat? And he goes, well, do you mean the animal or do you mean like a baseball bat? And she goes, either one. He says, no. Like, it was important to figure out which one did she intend. Regardless, it was neither, but he still wanted to define it, which I thought was hilarious because it didn't change the answer. Let me get back over here to this guy and see how we're doing on our Cinebench. Oh, we finished. Let me go full screen over here. And the maximum temp throughout that test, 92. So just temporarily hit 92 on core 3. Okay. And right now it's idling down in the 50s and high 50s, low 60s. That's really good. So let's go to the single core test, which once again, we'll do a 10-minute warm-up. And we're off to the races. So we have hit a maximum temp of 94 degrees Celsius. It looks like, for whatever reason, the first couple cores are running hotter than everything else. And then there's the whole package temp. It does show some thermal throttling happening, but just temporarily, and that's what thermal throttling is for. And then that's our final score, 1954. This is how it compares to other CPUs. But remember, Cinebench R23 is kind of old. I don't use R24 because it won't fit on my flash drive. It's massive. But that being said, let me grab a screenshot of this and save it. And then I'll have the results on the desktop. What have I done? Let's go back to this. Close this again. I'll save. Damn it, darn it. Now, function print screen button, then over to Paint, Control V, there we go. File, save as, JPEG on the desktop. Call it Cinebench R23 results. Save. Now we can close, close, close. We'll go to Settings, Windows Update, Advanced Recovery, Advanced Startup, and Restart Now. That's going to give us an advanced startup menu where entering the BIOS is one of the options on the restart. And you don't have to press any keys or worry about any timing because it's going to come up with a menu. And you're going to see that here in a minute. And we're going to just choose to go into the BIOS and it'll restart one more time and enter the BIOS all by itself following our direction. So as it reboots now, we're going to get a slightly different startup screen than what you're accustomed to seeing. This is what's called advanced startup. This is mostly used in diagnostic and repairs. Most people don't see this, or have only seen it a handful of times in the entire time they've owned their computer. So it starts by saying, please wait. So there's your first indication. Our boot up's a little different. And then it's going to say, okay, what do you want to do? We want to troubleshoot. And then we want to go to advanced options. And then we want to enter the UEFI firmware settings and confirm that. So once it restarts, it's going to restart us right into the BIOS. I mean, I could look at the directions or go online and find out what the key is. It's probably not delete. Here's a quick look at the BIOS. We'll go to Secure Boot, change it to Custom. Actually, let's just restore the factory keys and reset. I think that's all we need to do. Let's let it boot into Windows and we'll check and see if Secure Boot's on now. And you're getting in real time, you know, how long it takes to post, how long it takes for the little toilet bowl to spin before you get the Windows desktop. And then we'll go to MS Info right down here, MSI, and you'll notice it says System Information up here. That's what we want to check our Secure Boot status, which is now on. It's that easy. It's not a big deal. And go to minipcunion.com. And I realize nothing about that says AceMagic, but that is AceMagic. In fact, it represents all of these companies from Camrui, AceMagician, in Denmark, in the UK, United States, or DE is actually Germany, isn't it? Deutsch, UK. But there's also a company called Clone, or Cetone, I'm sorry, not Clone, Cetone, Napogi. And if you have any of these manufacturers, you can come here for support. And it's a forum, and they'll provide downloads and links to you here. This guy, Barry777, is a official AceMagic representative. There's another guy really helpful called Lamone. And a lot of these conversations are in other languages, but there's no language forum specific to a certain language. So they're all intermixed with Italian and German and English, Spanish, and thank goodness for Google Translate. And then if you're looking for specific information for a question or a driver that you are looking for, these are sorted conversations based on mini PCs that are made by the above mentioned companies and these other model names, that these forums are dedicated to discussing that particular model name. And then the Intel Core Ultra model names and the Intel Core processor model names. And then the N series processor model names. So if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, and if you're not sure or you don't see it, just use the main forum and you'll be guided accordingly. And the main forum is what? This just says recent. It'll usually tell you, like, this is a survey someone posted. Here's an N97, so that's probably posted in the N97 subforum. Yeah, it is. So I take back what I said. Find the unit here that you're asking questions for, or the one closest to it. And the community can answer you as well as officials. And so it's not just limited to private support. This is public support. So if you have an AceMagic, a Cetone, or Napogi, or a Camrui, you should know about this site.